rocky, coastal, misty area of California, maybe give a shout out in the chat if you've been there. It's a really special place. It's just got a lot of earthy vibes to it, but just really cool ocean views. So my bathroom here is inspired by that. So this is a little idea of where we're headed with the bathroom. And I'm gonna hop over to another file here in a moment after I give you a little spin around this bathroom. And we're gonna strip down this version of the bathroom a bit so that I can show you how I got to that point with a few of the pieces of this model. So first off, every 3D model comes to life with textures. So you can see that this model doesn't really have that many textures applied to it. I do have a few placeholder colors on the walls here and on the floor, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So I kind of masked out my model, and I brought in a few textures to my model ahead of time, just for speed's sake. So I pulled these mostly from external sources. SketchUp comes with a library of materials available, but I like to often find them from external libraries just because it is somewhat limited. There's a good like starter pack of materials in SketchUp, but as interior designers, we know there are just kind of endless options when it comes to speccing a material. So I often have to go outside of that. So my favorite one that I use is called SketchUpTextureClub.com. If somebody could throw that into the chat for me, that would be awesome. So people have that resource. It's kind of a funky looking website, but it's got a lot of good textures in there. So that's where most of these are from. All right, so first we're gonna start with the floor and we're gonna work our way up pretty quickly. I'm gonna show you a few different methods that I use for applying textures. So first up, I've got this guy here. This is going to be my flooring tile. So I'd like to sample it. So I'm gonna hit B for bucket, and it's already in my model, but I'm gonna sample it, B for bucket, and hold down my command key. And you can see when I hold down command, I get this little eyedropper. That is going to kind of suck up that texture for me and place it into my bucket tool. And I can see in this thumbnail over here that it did indeed sample that texture, and it highlighted it over here in my colors and model. And it may seem like instinct to just click on the floor, but I've organized my model in a way that I have different groups. So I have to first hit my select tool. You can see the wrapper here. I've got my shell grouped together. So I need to double click into that group so that I have access to this floor. But again, if I hop back to my paint bucket tool by tapping the letter B, I still have this, this texture sampled. So now I can click on the floor and apply it directly to the floor face. So we need to make sure we get into the habit of clicking on the actual face, not on the group wrapper, even though you're clicking in the exact same spot. So I'm gonna click out of this group here, and let's move on to the shower walls. So I'm gonna do like a teak shower here and an outdoor shower out here, both with this teak material. So I don't want to have to click on each face, so I'm going to use a extension called Material Replacer, and it's one of my favorites. Now, an extension is sort of like a SketchUp add-on. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. This one's free. I use it all the time. It's under Tools, Material Replacer, and this is something that you'll have to add on to SketchUp. Again, hopefully somebody can pop a link to that extension in the chat. But this one is just super easy. I just click on the color that I'd like to replace and then click on the texture that I'd like to replace it with. So you can see that really quickly, added in this texture. And this is a great way to try on different textures. If I have different samples in my model, I can just click, 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 just keep changing them through on all of those faces at once. Okay, same thing with this wall over here. I've got my tile sample here. So I'll click on this wall in the corner and then click on my tile sample. And now I've really quickly added in a good number of textures, and it's really coming to life here. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and add in some paint color. we're moving through our model quickly. I'll do the paint color and then we'll carry on to something else. So sometimes I just need to throw in a paint color quickly just to do a conceptual drawing. Sometimes I have the exact paint color that I would like to use. I'll show both methods. So the first one is just tossing a color in there just to conceptualize the room. For that, I like to use this pixel sampler here. It's in the materials browser. It's right here at the bottom, and it looks an awful lot like that sampler, that texture sampler that I used before, but this one's different, and you may have gotten these confused in the past. I used to do that too, not knowing that this one just samples color. So it just is going to look for the pixel. I'll click here and sample that pixel, and it's a solid color in the thumbnail. Again, I need access to the face, so I'll hit spacebar, double click into my wall group here, and I can paint the faces, that really dark green color. So it'll change. I know it looks dark right now, but it'll change once I add some shadows to this. So that is a really quick way to make this cohesive. Another way would be to sample a pixel from a paint website or another external source. So I'm going to go ahead and show that here. So I pulled up the Benjamin Moore website, and I have a few other greens that I'd like to try on. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go ahead and double click back into that wall group and get that same tool. It's that pixel sampler. And I can go off screen. I don't need to stay within the SketchUp window for this guy. I can go off screen, select something from this paint chip, select that color, and then paint the walls that new color. So that's a really quick way to grab a paint color from an external source. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and click out of that guy. So again, the pixel sampler and that paint bucket. So the B for bucket, hold down Command. This guy is different than this guy. If you're on a Windows machine and you've got the bucket tool going, it's going to be your Alt key to sample that. So Command on a Mac, Alt on a Windows machine. Okay, I said we were moving on from textures, but I lied. We're going to do a few more things with textures really quickly, because that is really where that and items from the 3D warehouse are really where your model comes to life. So first up, this is a really big window over here, and we've got a bathtub right in front of it. And I don't really want to be seen by whatever's going on outside of that bathtub. So I would like to go ahead and give this glass a nice frosted look. So I'll double click into my glass. And I'm going to draw a line about 3/4 of the way up, because I do want the light to come in full, whatever at the top, but I do want the bottom 3/4 to be opaque. So I'll draw a line to separate those two faces. And now I'll grab just a color over here. I'm just going to grab the white color here and move the opacity slider down a bit. So it's slightly transparent, and I'll go ahead and paint that guy like that. So now we've got a frosted glass. However, I don't really love that this edge is here, but if I were to delete it, these two faces wouldn't be separate. So I can just hide that guy. I'm going to tap my eraser. So again, I don't want to erase this, but if you check out the lower left-hand corner of the SketchUp window, you can often find really helpful hints. So right now I can see that if I hold down Shift, it equals hide. So I'm going to hold down Shift and click and drag across that edge, or click on it. And now I've hidden that edge, but it's still doing its job. It's still separating out those two faces there. So now I've kind of peeper-proofed my bathroom, and I can move on. Okay, this shower area over here, I'd like to quickly flip this vertical texture. I don't want it to be vertical, I'd like it to be horizontal. So a really quick way to change the orientation of that is to just right-click on the face, texture, position, And I can alter it using these grips. The red and the green ones are the most helpful, but I can also right click on that and choose rotate 90 degrees. All right, so I'm gonna hit enter to set that and click off of that group. Okay, so it's really quickly coming together. I want to talk a little bit about this vanity area. So I've already drawn it, but I kind of want to back up a little bit and show you how I drew that. Let me give one more look. There's a, there's a trough sink, a ramp sink here, and I want to explain how I quickly made that happen. So I'm going to delete that or hide it using my tags, and I'm going to draw on this wall. However, there are a bunch of darker, high contrast textures applied to this area. It's going to be a little hard for me to see sometimes what I'm drawing. So I like to switch to a monochrome when I'm adding in geometry after textures have been applied like this. I've added this to my toolbar, but you can also go to View, Face Style, Monochrome, and we can just work on this in sort of that default white face style. Okay, so it's going to be 3 feet to the finished top there. So I'm going to grab my tape measure tool, go from the ground up 3 feet. And then from that point, I'll work my way back down. It's going to be 9 inches deep or tall. And then from there, I've got a shelf at 11 inches. And my shelf is going to be 1 1/4 inch. So I'll do 1.25. So I like to use my tape measure tool a lot to kind of mark out a grid for myself before I add in any geometry. And that's just because guidelines are pretty safe. They're not going to stick to anything, or mess up my model, whereas drawing geometry can sometimes get a little more hairy. So I like to make sure I give myself a template. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and just go from intersection to intersection and intersection to intersection. Okay, so this is working because I have my shell grouped together. I'm kind of a big stickler for making sure that your model is properly, or at least things are part of a group before you start drawing on top of them, before you start drawing different elements. So this guy is a completely different element. He's not sticking to the wall. All right.
Hey, Tammy?
Yes.
You're doing great. I just want to start by saying that.
Oh,
about halfway through, I just want to remind everybody, if you have questions that you want to ask Tammy about the presentation, about what she's showing, go ahead and pop them into the Q&A. If you click Q&A there, you can actually ask questions, and we'll try to reserve some time at the very end to ask those questions. But
yep. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to hop over. We're going to switch gears, and we'll answer some questions. So I've got a couple more things to show you. Got a really fun thing about this shower head coming up.
Awesome.
Okay,
thank you.
Good reminder, Aaron. Okay, so I'm going to keep drawing this vanity. I'm going to pull this forward to 21 inches, and same with this guy. I'll pull it forward 21 inches. All right, now I need to group this together, so I'm going to triple click, 1, 2, 3, make it a group. Same thing with the shelf, make it a group. I'm going to speed through this part just to make sure that we have enough time for questions. But this guy is going to be my trough sink. So I'm going to offset it, the top, I'm going to offset it 4 inches. And then the front of this, I can grab just this line, I'll pre-select it, and I'll move it forward, make sure along the green or the red axis here. I'm going to move it forward just so that when we're brushing our teeth, toothpaste doesn't spill right here. And I will push it down about 6 inches. Okay, so now I need to make a ramp, and I need it to go from here to here. There's a few different ways I can do that, but I really just want to grab the edge right here. Instead of trying to orbit to grab that edge, I can simply turn on my X-ray mode, which I've set as a custom shortcut, and I can select that edge there. Even though I can't see it without X-ray mode on, I can select it. I'll grab my move tool, click on that endpoint to meet it up with this endpoint here. And you can see we've really quickly given ourselves a ramp sink. All right, I'm going to turn back on my textures. And I'm going to use that same sample So B for bucket, hold down Command or Alt, double click back in there, and I'm going to paint this. And instead of painting every single face individually, I can actually hold down my Shift key, and you can see next to the paint bucket icon there, I've got 3 little dots. And that just means that I'm about to paint everything within the group that was the old color. It's going to now be the new color. So that's a really speedy way to paint all of that. The shelf down here, I'll just grab a darker color. Same thing, hold down Shift and paint the whole, everything at once. Just make sure you're double clicked into that group. Okay, we've got 2 minutes before questions. I'm going to skip over this part, and I want to talk a little bit about the shower head real quick.
Hey, just to let you know, Tammy, you got 2 questions in there right now, so
okay.
If you want to do a little extra content, we got time.
Okay, cool. So this shower head, if anybody has questions about how I space those faucets, I can show that after the shower head, but I want to make sure I get to those 2 questions. So this shower head here is something that is really cool, new in the 3D warehouse. So you can see I have a lot of objects in my model right now, and I did not draw all of these objects. I got most of them from the 3D warehouse. And that's where we can go and download objects from a sort of digital library. It's huge, it's got a lot of great stuff in there. But this shower head is special because when I looked for it, I was able to configure it with something called live components. And you can see some of them highlighted here in the warehouse. And if I just search for a Kohler, searching for a Kohler shower head, so you have a lot of great stuff from Kohler. But if I click on Advanced, I can turn on that live component option. So the first setting is Products. I'm going to click on Models. And I can see that Kohler has 1 live component right now, but SketchUp Labs is continually adding new components to this. So be sure to check back regularly to see what's available. This one is just under the Kohler one. There's tons of other stuff in there. But I can click Configure. And as it's loading, after it loads, you'll see on the right-hand side, I'll have some options like hose length, the finish of the material, the style of the head, lots of options. Okay, here we go. So I can click the drop down and alter this so that it fits what I would like to spec. And then you can just click download, and you can download it directly into your model and place it. So that's what I've done here with this shower head. But once I've downloaded, I can still configure it. It's not locked in. Once you download it, I can right click on it and choose Configure Live Component. So once that loads, we'll see a similar or the same list of options, and we can change it on the fly. So that is a really cool new feature from SketchUp. So again, change the hose length, and it changes live. Sorry, my computer's lagging a little bit. There it goes. So very cool. I suggest you check out the 3D warehouse and just click that live component option and see what they have available. So I'm going to hop over to the questions so that we don't run out of time. Okay, Heather's asking, how do you get the texture swatches in front of the model, or is that necessary? So it's not necessary to have that swatch. That was just me speeding up the presentation. You can also just import textures directly into your model. So I can double click into this wall group, and I can go to File, Import, and import a texture image. So I suggest when you look for them, you look for a seamless image so that it tiles itself and repeats as these do. I just brought in that this color swatch here just so that you could see, what I was applying. But yes, you can go to File, Import, and bring in a texture. Okay, Dawn, I have a question about seamless textures. Were the samples that you brought in seamless? Yes, they were seamless. I have an existing stone floor that I need to work with. I have photographed it and have found photos that sort of match. They show the tile pattern. Is there a way to incorporate that into the model? Yes, I believe that Erin may be doing, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Erin, but you're doing a texture an image session tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about, yeah, modeling
Okay.
details or using images for them.
Okay, cool. So everyone might want to check that out because textures, like I said in the beginning, are a super important part of your 3D model, making it look good, come to life. So be sure to check out Erin's, but yes, you can use images that you took a picture of. You just make sure that you take it straight on, and you can always alter those slightly in SketchUp, but, and you want to make sure that there's no shine on one side, because that'll become very obvious. But what I normally do is I try and find a good representation of that from an external library or within SketchUp, and I apply it in that way, because sometimes that looks better than the image. It just depends on the texture. Again, there's just so many options for material in interior design, especially tile. Tile is like the trickiest one because there's so many options. So you kind of have to weigh, do I want this to look like a photo that was repeated where you can really see the shine on one side, or a generated texture that's seamless. So if you know Photoshop really well, you can make a seamless one. You can also make them seamless in SketchUp, but you just kind of have to play with that. I don't know if I answered your question. Christine said, do you have tips to place an object from the 3D warehouse in the model? And then Laura said, I would love to see the faucet spacing you mentioned. Okay, we've got 5 minutes. So placing objects from the 3D warehouse in the model. Lately, I've been getting into the habit of when I download something from the 3D warehouse, this is like one extra step. I'll go ahead and click on this monogram range here. When I click download, it says load directly into your model. I've been checking no. And the reason for that is it downloads a file on its own of that piece. And it's just, the SketchUp file just has that piece in there. And if I'm unsure, this is going to be a really good model, this monogram range. But if I'm unsure about the model and I don't want it kind of blowing up my file, I usually will download it and open it on its own to kind of inspect it. And then I'll drag that file or go to File Import, that SketchUp file, and bring it into my SketchUp model. Just because sometimes they're huge, sometimes they have big bounding boxes, or I don't want it weighing down my model. So that's one tip. That is, I don't always do that. That's just one extra step. Or you can download it directly into your model. We're just going to put a range in our bathroom. It's going to look amazing. Maybe that's your dream bathroom. It's not really mine, but it's loading. So while that's doing it, I would just say, the first click, when you set it down into your model, just try and get it in the general area of where you'd like it. And then you can kind of drive it into place after that. Especially if it's something that glues itself to the wall, you'll want to go ahead and just click on the wall where it's going to land eventually. Sorry, my computer's taking a break here. Hopefully I didn't break the whole session by downloading this. Yeah, so those are my main tips. The first click, when you set it down, something from the warehouse, just try and get it in the general area. And then use your arrow keys to lock in the direction, so that red and green direction. Make sure that you drive it into place. It's going to be kind of like parallel parking or like a 2-point turn. You want to like drive it to the right or left first, and then front and back. So that's kind of how I do it. I know it's a little bit, if you want to be precise with where you're setting things, you have to kind of take the time to go right to left, front to back. Okay, there's our range. Set it in there. So something that's really cool with SketchUp lately, that one of the new releases, is that you can grab things by the bounding box. So I can grab this by the bottom here and move it around. So that green and then red, so kind of driving things into place. So this guy does not belong in a bathroom, so I'm going to delete it, and I will hop back to this area, and we'll talk more about driving things around. Okay, so we're going to end on this guy. I've already placed these faucets in here, and I'll talk a bit about what I was just mentioning, driving things along the red and the green. So I've already placed one in the area that I'd like. I'd like to space them evenly. So I'm going to draw a line that will be temporary. I'm going to go from here to here, or from wherever, you know, I would like to space this. So I've got a temporary line, and I'm going to right click and choose divide. And as I move my cursor, you can see those red dots appear, and this faucet is centered on this line segment. If I click and release to set it, I've got one segment here. I don't need the one in the middle, and this segment is going to be the center of this faucet. So we've got some evenly spaced edges. I delete what I don't need. I can select this faucet since it's already in place and hit M for move. So this is another tip about moving things around in your model. Once they're in there, you can do a relative move. You don't have to click on the item if it's pre-selected. So I've pre-selected it. It's blue. The bounding box is highlighted, and now I can reference the center point of this edge, click and release. I'm going to use that move plus option to create a copy, that move copy tool. And I'm going to hover over the midpoint in this edge and click and release. So now I've divided this segment 5 equal spaces, so I know that these are going to be equally spaced. I'll delete those edges that I don't need. And I use that trick for spacing pendants over a kitchen island as well. That's really helpful. There's a lot of other, helpful uses for that. But draw a line, right click, divide, and then choose the spacing and the number of segments that you'll need to reference. You might be referencing the endpoints of those. You might be referencing the midpoints. Just depends on the math that you're trying to do. But SketchUp makes it really easy so that you don't have to do that math. Okay, let me check and make sure we have any. We've got a few more questions. We do have a few more questions, but we are going to end on the nose on the hour. If you have more questions, please feel free to email me, Tammy at SketchUp for Interior Designers. Go ahead and stop sharing. Erin and SketchUp team, thank you so much for having me. I will be around tomorrow. Same time, we're going to talk about documenting this design in layout. We're going to grab some elevations straight from our 3D model. The following day, I'm going to show tips and tricks. Also, be sure to check out the SketchUp booth. There's going to be sessions all day. I know that Josh is presenting in the GE booth. Erin's presenting later. And it all starts again tomorrow. So hopefully you'll all join us. You there, Erin?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Tammy. That was awesome. I learned some things.
Cool.
As always.
Awesome. Yeah,
and as Tammy was saying,
I think Josh just put my website. If anybody wants to check out my website, SketchUp for Interior Designers, Josh popped that into the chat as well. So find me there. But yes,